Even a man with a cold heart pours his heart to one which is in deeper tragedy than himself. On the contrary, does man attain redemption on the person he's been vulnerable in front of through humiliation and control? We will discuss this theme in more detail throughout this video. In the last video, we discussed the underground man's experience at the farewell dinner and how he wasn't able to get along with any of the guests. And he eventually follows all of the other schoolmates into a brothel, and at the end of the night, he ends up sleeping with a young prostitute. The next day, the underground man wakes up and he sees the young prostitute sleeping right beside him. And as she wakes up, she looks at him with a lot of curiosity, revealing her name as Liza. The underground man is at such a low point from the night before that he tries to impose some wisdom on Liza, and he feels that he's above Liza in society with her being a prostitute. He tells Liza a story of a prostitute who died a demoralizing death in a basement and how her clients drank to her death. Liza becomes interested in this story, and he goes on to imply how shameful the profession of prostitution is. He gets a sort of high from gauging Liza's emotions and pours his feelings of family and personal ethics to her. He begins expressing to Liza how important family is, and how if he had a daughter, how much he would love and take care of her. He also tells Liza that if she continues being a prostitute, her morality would degrade, and she'll be forced to die in a basement the same way the other woman did. The underground man sparks a very severe pain in Liza emotionally. She begins sobbing in her pillow. Liza eventually opens up to the underground man, and she reads out loud a love letter she received from a medical student that she danced with. At this point, the underground man leaves Liza, handing over his address to her, saying that she's welcome over to his home. A few days after the underground man leaving the brothel, he has a clash with a servant awaiting his wages. At the same time, he is stressed about paying his debt to Simonoff from the night of the farewell dinner, and he is also awaiting Liza to possibly visit him and is eagerly anticipating her arrival. The underground man begins imposing himself aggressively on the servant, eagerly demanding his respect each time he walks through the door and sees him. Losing his temper, he plans to strike the servant, and at the very moment, Liza walks in. Initially, the underground man tries to brush off the entire situation between him and the servant as if nothing happened, and Liza pretends not to notice at this point. However, during Lisa's time in the underground man's home, his frustration slowly begins to grow and grow, and he eventually ends up exploding in front of Liza, saying that he never intended to be kind to her, and his words before were to manipulate her emotions rather than being words of sympathy and care. Liza is crushed to hear the underground man's cruel words, but acknowledges his pain and embraces him. He sobs and cries, and Liza provides him with moral support. Ironically, this time, the underground man puts himself in a vulnerable position in front of Liza, crying. However, going through pain in her life, she understands that this spite may not be coming from hatred, rather, pain. At the end, before Liza leaves, she realizes that the underground man may not love her the way he showed earlier, but he desires to humiliate her and feel above her. He tries to hand her money before she leaves the house, but she leaves it on the table and walks out. The underground man ends with saying that he was too focused on his own thoughts and should have been more concerned about Lisa's welfare. He also acknowledges that Liza was his last hope, and how he sabotaged his opportunity to develop a meaningful relationship with her. The underground man is human after all, and the love Liza was showing him may have felt foreign, never experiencing true parental love growing up an orphan. At the same time, he felt that being emotionally open to Liza exposed his emotional vulnerabilities, and he tried to redeem himself by humiliating and showing control over her. Maybe this was to redeem himself from the vulnerability he faced, or to not have himself feel beneath someone else, as men are urged not to display emotions. All in all, we can see that the underground man has a lot of issues managing his vulnerability and his relationships with people. He regularly self-sabotages any friendship or relationship that he makes, and is afraid of becoming vulnerable to those that care for him. even though the underground man recognizes that him being vulnerable is necessary, it is too much for him to feel that he's beneath anyone and forfeits any relationships that he can make. The underground man clearly wants to develop relationship with people, being in constant state of self-isolation from everyone else. But at this point, the pain has become so familiar to the underground man that rather than focus and develop his relationship skills, he instead decides to exist within himself and continue this pattern. With that being said, I highly recommend to read Notes from Underground. The book is around 130 pages, but the material in the book is dense, and it may require you to read once, twice, maybe even three times to get the whole gist of the story. Again, Dostoyevsky's psychological analysis and his character development is unparalleled. And so again, I would highly recommend you to read Notes from Underground and gain insight from what you believe the underground man to be.